In the middle of the small town of Willowbrook lived a man named Jack. He had a reputation for always being honest. In a world that valued such traits, he was an excellent role model of integrity. Jack was a mechanic. He had spent decades of his life learning how to fix cars, trucks, and any other machines that came into his shed. His skilled hands were more than just tools. They showed how much he cared about what he did. Each and every engine, clutch, and squeaky brake pad that he worked on showed how dedicated he was to doing a great job. When people in town left their cars with Jack, they knew they would be taken care of by a trustworthy person. His garage wasn't just a place to fix things, it was a safe place where he could always count on things. His loving girlfriend Sarah was there for him through all his wrenching and gear changing. She helped him in every way she could. They talked about their happiness, and Sarah's laughter was like a relaxing melody in the background of the noise of his garage. When bad things happened in life, they dealt with them together and found comfort in each other's hugs. Their love was as strong as the toughest engine Jack had ever fixed. One day, while Jack was working hard in his garage, something unexpected happened. The garage was full of tools, all of which had been used carefully and put away in their correct locations. The loud chorus of metal clanging could be heard. A wrench that had been used for many repairs was hanging from a high shelf. It could have been fate or just a bad turn of events. The wrench hit Jack right in the head, making a loud sound in the garage. The impact was so hard that Jack was knocked out. The metal of the wrench hits his forehead with a painful thud. His work shirt was stained with blood from the cut. He fell to the ground and shook his head in pain. The garage was now a mess. Jack's favorite project to restore an old car was still unfinished, and his tools were all over the place. The day's peace and quiet had turned into a nightmare. Jack got out of his garage in a daze and left the tools and cars he had been taking care of for years behind. His surroundings spun as he stumbled towards the middle of Willowbrook. People in the town gasped in shock and worry as they saw him. Jack finally arrived at the front door of Willowbrook General Hospital, which seemed to have been waiting for him with doors wide open. The hospital staff knew right away how serious his situation was, from what they were seeing in front of them. The doctors and nurses rushed to help Jack, knowing how bad the situation was. Jack was in terrible condition, and his strength was slowly going away. His head injury was very bad, and the doctors told him in a sad voice that he needed surgery right away to save his life. As the medical team got ready for life-saving surgery, the busy hospital turned into a beehive of activity. Jack was left with a heavy load of fear and doubt. The surgery did work, casting a bright light of hope through the dark clouds of doubt. As Jack slowly woke up from the anesthesia, the world around him became clear. He laid in a clean hospital room where machines buzzed, supporting his life. Knowing that he had just barely avoided a terrible fate made him feel a wave of relief. Even so, the win was bittersweet because it cost so much. Jack slowly came to terms with the hard truth that was in front of him. As he regained his composure, he couldn't move around as easily after the accident, and his body had changed in ways he couldn't fully understand yet. Like the wrench that had hit him, he felt his world was breaking into a million bits. He was no longer the same person he was as a mechanic. He had built his life upon the noise of tools clattering. In the days that followed, Jack had to go through a very hard rehabilitation process where he had to learn how to do even the easiest things again. Once taken for granted, being able to walk and work freely now seemed like a faraway dream. It was hard to get better because the road was full of doubt and anger. He couldn't help but cry as he looked out the hospital window. The noise of tools clattering in his shed, which used to be the soundtrack of his life's work, was now silenced for good. He now had to face an unsure future, where the sounds of the past would always play in his mind. To make things even worse, Sarah left Jack because she couldn't handle the sudden change in his life. It broke her heart to think about being with a man who couldn't take care of her like he used to. When she left, Jack's heart felt empty, and the pain was worse than any wound from the accident. Their love, which used to be very strong, was now broken. Jack was cut from the rest of the world, had no job, and faced with a pile of bills that looked like they would never go away. The stress of his financial responsibilities weighed him down like a heavy blanket, making every moment of his awake time dull. Every day it got harder and harder to make ends meet. He carefully tracked every dollar and looked for ways to save money and cut costs, so he could avoid constant calls from debtors. The comforts of life that he used to enjoy were taken away, and in their place was a haunting insecurity that followed him around like a shadow. The world around Jack kept going down, and he couldn't get out of it. His problems made him feel like he was drowning, and the waves of hopelessness were about to put him under. His loneliness was complete. He had no money, no job, and it looked like no one to turn to. It felt like the walls were closing in on him. Late at night, when he was alone in his room, the thought that life wasn't worth living kept coming back to him. He felt like the world was too heavy for him to handle, and he longed for a lifeline, something that would pull him out of his misery. Jack had a big realization one night while watching a sad news story about an organ donor. The room wasn't very well lit, and the TV gave his face a shimmering glow as he sat alone and thought about the huge problems that life had given him. The news story showed how desperate people are while waiting for organ transplants that could save their lives. The people's faces were filled with hope and desire. While Jack heard their stories, it hurt his heart and made him feel something deep inside. If he gave his kidney to someone who really needed it, because he felt it could be the light of hope for someone who had been waiting for a second chance at life, he promised himself he would make a difference, even if it was just one life. It was his way of fighting back against the hopelessness that had taken over him. He believed he could make the world a better place before his time was up. Jack had always been known for being kind. It was a big part of who he was, and he thought that helping others was the only way he could still make a difference, even though his own life was falling apart. After applying to be a kidney donor, Jack got the news he was waiting for. He was matched with a person who needed a donation right away and could save their life. In the middle of his own problems, the letter from the hospital, which carried the hope of someone else, came like a light. Jack had no idea who would get the letter and had no plans to find out. He didn't care about it. He really wanted to make a difference, even if it was only for one person. He wanted to touch and change the life of that one soul. It gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't had in a long time, to know he could give someone a second chance at life. David, the person who got Jack's kidney, became more and more interested in the person who had given him a second chance at life as the months went by. He thought about the kind person a lot, because they gave him a chance to live another day and enjoy the good things in life again. He was determined to show his appreciation the more he thought about his wonderful gift. Without a doubt, David really wanted to meet his anonymous donor. His dream started to grow stronger in his heart every day. The person who had given him a second chance at life made him feel like he had to look them in the eyes and tell them how much he appreciated them. When he called the hospital to tell them he really wanted to meet the man who had helped him so much, you could feel his excitement and determination. The hospital staff was moved by Dave's unwavering drive, so they eagerly set up the long-awaited meeting. As soon as everything was set, they agreed to meet at one cozy cafe in the middle of Willowbrook. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and the soft hum of talk made the space feel warm and welcoming. It was the ideal place for David to meet the donor and hear the whole story behind the good deed that saved his life. David's heart was racing when he saw the doctor entering the cafe. Dr. Henderson greeted him with a smile on his face. The two men felt comfortable sitting next to each other, as if they had known each other for many years. David could not wait any longer to learn everything about the man who had saved his life. Dr. Henderson, who had a kind face and a soft smile, leaned forward and started to tell Jack's story. The room was filled with the soft, comforting light of afternoon sunshine that came in through the blinds. David paid close attention and felt moved as he learned about the details of Jack's life. Dr. Henderson told the sad story of the accident that changed everything. He talked about the day that wrench fell and set off a chain of events that changed Jack's life forever. From what the doctor said, David felt what Jack had been through, being alone, losing his job, and the pain of losing love. Dr. Henderson told Jack's story of strength and kindness with a heavy heart. In talking about the moment, Jack chose to donate his kidney. He showed how much compassion and unwavering kindness had led to the life-saving surgery. David was greatly moved and motivated by Jack's story. At the end of his story, the doctor could see how David was feeling about it. The person who had got the gift of life felt very close to the man who had given him a second chance. The amount of appreciation he felt was immeasurable, and he brought the two men together in a way that words could not describe. David knew he had to meet Jack, not just to say thanks, but to be part of the story of how kindness changed Jack's life. David was determined to find the person who gave him a second chance at life. He looked all through Willowbrook and asked everyone he met for any information that could help him find Jack. He did everything and thought about everything to find the humble hero. Hours turned into days as David kept going after it. He went to shops in the area, talked to people who lived there, and even put up signs around the neighborhood to look for any clue that might lead to his donor. The town rallied behind David's goal because they were amazed by the story of the man who got life from a stranger. On a sunny afternoon, David was telling a group of people in town about his trip when an older woman came up to him. She said her name was Miss Thompson and that she lived in Willowbrook for a long time. She had important information to share. She knew where Jack had been living because she had been friends for a long time. "Jack," she said, "has been living in that little apartment building on Elm Street. I haven't seen him around lately though, sweetheart. He's been having a rough time." Based on what Miss Thompson told him, David went to find Jack's room on Elm Street. He was struck by how dirty the building looked as he got closer. The paint was coming off and the windows needed to be fixed right away. He rang Jack's apartment doorbell with a sad heart, ready for what was to come. Jack's face showed a mix of surprise and interest when he opened the door. He asked, "How can I help you?" without knowing who David was. David responded, "I think I can help you," and his voice was full of appreciation. "My name is David, and I'm here because of you." When Jack found out who David was, his eyes got really big. He let him in, and they started to talk. David found out about all the problems Jack had been having, from the money problems to the mental effects of his accident and Sarah's leaving. Based on Jack's story and his kindness, David made an offer that would change Jack's life forever. "Jack," he started, "thank you so much for everything you've done for me. You saved my life, and now I want to help you." It was a literal lifesaver when David made that offer to Jack, in stark contrast to the rundown apartment Jack had been living in. He gave Jack a big, comfortable house in a quiet area. Jack's bills had been bringing him down, and they were taken care of by David. This let him focus on getting better and rebuilding his life. Jack was filled with feeling as he walked through the doorway of his new home. He had no idea that things could turn out so differently. Warm sunlight filled the house, and the rooms sounded like they could use a new start. Since the accident, he had been desperately missing the sign of hope that it was. That made Jack cry. He looked at David and said, "You gave me a second chance, just like I gave you. I have no idea how to thank you." David gave a warm smile. "Jack, your kindness has already paid it forward. Right now, it's your turn to start over and rebuild." Jack's sense of purpose started to come back once he had a roof over his head and was no longer in that miserable place he was before. The weight of his past problems slowly lifted, and he felt hopeful about a better future. David was moved by Jack's selflessness and saw that he could be more than just a guy who donated a kidney. David told Jack about an idea that would make their lives completely different from now on. "Jack," he started, "I've been thinking about how we could use your kindness to do good things. We can make something amazing together." Jack was interested and asked, "What do you have in mind?" David explained, "We'll start a humanitarian organization whose goal is to promote organ donation and help families in need. We can save a lot of lives and make a real difference in our neighborhood and beyond with your hard work and my resources." David and Jack started the Willowbrook Organ Donation Foundation together. It was a charity that wanted to make a difference in the lives of people who needed help. The organization came to life thanks to Jack's unwavering drive and David's kind donations. They worked hard to make sure that organ donors and receivers were matched in the most efficient and caring way possible. People who were waiting for life-saving transplants saw the group as a beacon of hope, and families found comfort and support during their hardest times. The foundation also helped families who were having a hard time paying off their medical bills so they could focus on their loved ones' health without having to worry about money too. It wasn't just a group, it was a way for people in need to get help. The course of Jack's life changed completely. He had a good life, full of gratitude and the simple pleasures of a quiet home. He also kept helping people, not by donating his organs as he initially intended, but by being devoted to the Willowbrook Organ Donation Foundation all the time. He felt very good about himself when he knew that what he was doing was changing the world for the better. Jack had gone from being a simple worker in a small town to being a sign of hope and progress. Even in the worst times, he showed that being kind and not caring about yourself could bring healing and hope. In the end, Jack's story was a powerful lesson that being kind and selfless can bring redemption and hope, even in the worst times. Jack's story of going from being hopeless to making a big difference shows how strong the human spirit is and how it can get through hard times and find meaning in helping others. Everyone who heard the story of the poor mechanic who became a light in the world was moved by it. Not just the people of Willowbrook,